Now, you might be wondering why Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, near the bottom of the world, is in Europe, at the top of the world, for a conference of NATO, which is actually a defence alliance for Europe and the United States, not for our end of the globe at all. And I've been hearing the jokes about Airbus Albo and his foreign jaunts and fawning over the French president. In fact, this is deadly serious, because what you are seeing is a realisation now in the West that, as we were just saying with Councillor Brough, China is a menace. It is actually preparing for war. And if we democracies do not form a united military front, we are toast. And Albanese is over there making sure that Australia is locking in with more allies, and good on him. And all this became obvious with the communique that NATO put out overnight. It said the Indo-Pacific region, that's our area, is important for NATO, even though it's supposedly the North Atlantic Treaty Organisation. The Indo-Pacific is important given that developments in that region can directly affect Europe-Atlantic security. The People's Republic of China has said its stated ambitions and coercive policies challenge our interests, security and values. And it, of course, linked Russia's invasion of Ukraine to China, said China was a bad boy for supporting Ukraine, and sure is. And that, by the way, is one of the reasons Australia is giving these weapons and now these 30 new Bushmasters to Ukraine, why Albanese is meeting Zelensky right now. Here is what he told Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just moments ago.
Australia is inspired by your leadership, your resilience of the Ukrainian people, the courage that you are showing in fighting not just for your national sovereignty, but fighting for the international rule of law. Recently we had an issue with a Russian embassy in Australia that we took action to ensure that they weren't in a position which was inappropriate, so close to our Parliament House. We recently provided an announcement of increased support, including humanitarian aid.
Joining me from Washington is Jack Keane. He's a retired 4-star general who served as Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He now serves as chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, great to talk to you again. Now, this NATO meeting, it ends today. There were arguments about how much NATO should do to boost cooperation with democracies on our side of the world, like Japan and South Korea and Australia, against the Chinese threat. France wasn't keen on this push. Has NATO now done enough to start this joint defence talks and sort of interaction with countries like us?
Well, NATO's done a remarkable turnaround, and certainly Russia has the primary cause of it. China is the second. I mean, when you think about where NATO is today, because of Putin's aggression, that they've come together, united against a common cause, and that is helping Ukraine drive the Russians out of their country, and they put together a rather significant coalition to support Ukraine. Without that support, Ukraine wouldn't be anywhere near where it is. But they also have recognized that the threat from China and the aggression that's playing out before our eyes in Ukraine are related. These are authoritarian regimes who want to impose their will, not just regionally, but particularly in the case of China, globally, and replace the United States and like-minded democracies in terms of the international order that's been established to prevent World War III. They want to impose their will. And the fact that NATO, a political and military alliance obviously centered on Europe, with Europe's national interests, sees this relationship and invites members of the Indo-Pacific region, to include your Prime Minister, to attend these meetings, I think is very pivotal in terms of facing up to the realities that are in front of us. The fact is, if Russia wins the war in Ukraine, China wins, and it's an incentive for China to conduct similar aggression against Taiwan or in the region writ large.
I mean, I find it heartening. I think also one thing that's frightened people is that with all the NATO and American help, Ukraine still, what a slog it is to push back Russia. Can you imagine what it'd be to fight China? No country can do it on its own. But first, that war in Ukraine, it has to be won, General. Ukraine is desperate for weapons for its soldiers. The US has just agreed to send cluster bombs. And the head of NATO said, well, look, at this NATO summit, there've just been made some fresh promises of weapons. Here he is.
And just over the last few days, allies have made substantial new announcements. France has announced that they will deliver long-range cruise missiles. Germany just announced a new package with air defense and armored vehicles. And the US made yet another big announcement of more military support. And many other allies have made different types of support.
General Jack Keane, for me, the frustration, of course, is that, so much of these deliveries, it could have been done before and should have been. That would have been much more helpful. But what you've seen being promised at this NATO summit, is it enough?
Well, no, it's not enough. And the frustration we have, while the support has been significant, the timing of the support and the introduction of weapon systems haven't been anywhere near the time schedule that Ukraine wanted. They requested advanced fighter aircraft last year, and they still haven't received them. Training is going to begin on those aircraft, which is a step in the right direction, but a year late. They've requested these long-range cruise missiles and long-range artillery weapons last year. And some of them still haven't arrived yet. There are cruise missiles from the UK there, but the long-range missiles from the United States are not there. It looks like the United States is going to provide them, but none of them are there in time for this offensive that the Ukrainians are conducting. So there is a frustration. I mean, I believe this, Andrew, having watched this closely and been involved in it with the Institute for the Study of War every single day, that the United States in particular has believed that they give Ukraine enough weapons not to lose, but not sufficient weapons to win decisively. And when it looks like things may not go Ukraine's way, then they ante up more capability to make certain that Ukraine doesn't lose. But Ukraine wants to take all its territory back, liberate all its people, which is understandable. That is what victory looks like for Ukraine, and we should be supporting that, but we're not.
I think that's a good point. The one thing delay means is that Ukraine gets fewer and fewer soldiers to keep fighting because they die. General Jack Keane, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, great talking to you, Andrew. Thank you.